So you've heard of macronutrients, haven't you? Carbohydrates, fats, protein, and also fibre is the ginger little, I'm allowed to say that because I'm ginger, the ginger little brother that nobody really likes but has to put up with. And you're trying to lose fat, but there's loads of people online saying that you need to eat this amount of carbohydrates, this amount of fats, and this amount of protein, and you don't know which way is up. Now, I have a little bit of a different take to a lot of these people who suggest that you need to intake a certain amount of fat and carbohydrates. I don't think that the general population, so hopefully that's you watching, needs to have a carbohydrate and fat split. And what I mean by carbohydrate and fat split is whereby you need to intake a certain amount of carbohydrates and a certain amount of fats in order to make any kind of progress with your fat loss journey. I don't believe that's the case, and I don't believe that you should, especially if, as I said, you are part of the general population. The reason why is because these two macronutrients don't have as much of an impact on fat loss as protein does, and at the end of the day, if you try and overwhelm yourself with a bunch of shit that you don't really need to do, then you are just going to get overwhelmed. You're probably going to get paralyzed by perfection, you're probably going to get really, really confused, and you likely won't do the shit that you need to do in order to get to where you want to be. Because overwhelm is the number one thing that stops people from actually making progress. They get overwhelmed, they don't want to do it, and they stay stood still. So my take on the whole macro split is as follows. If you are part of the general population who just wants to lose fat, who just wants to look good with their top off, who just wants to get stronger, and who just wants to transform their body a little bit, focus firstly on your calorie intake, because that's going to be the most important part of the fat loss process. If you're trying to lose fat, create a calorie deficit. If you're trying to put on muscle, have a caloric surplus. If you're trying to maintain your current body weight but lose fat and gain muscle at the same time, caloric maintenance. Focus firstly on getting your protein in. So your ideal protein target should be somewhere between the 1 gram per kilogram of body weight per day all the way up to around the 1.8 gram per kilogram of body weight per day. This has changed over the past few years. People used to say 1.6 to 2.2, but research has actually suggested that it starts dropping off around the 1.8 mark. So you don't even need to get that much protein in compared to what people suggested a few years ago. Every calorie left after you've got your protein in can be used for your fats and your carbohydrates. So fat and carbohydrate intake is basically calories left over once protein is consumed. You don't need to get a specific amount of carbohydrates in your system. You don't need to get a specific amount of fats in your system if you're part, as I said, of the general population. Ideally, you should just be focusing on your protein intake and your calorie intake. So this is what you should focus on. You shouldn't really focus on anything else that anyone tells you to do, because these are golden. These are gold standard, and these are what you should be doing. Now, as I said, if you're not part of the general population, if you are, for example, somebody that's got certain dietary needs or hormonal imbalances, you might actually need to change the amount of carbohydrates and fats that you're intaking. Somebody who's going through the menopause, for example, I suggest reducing your carbohydrate intake down a little bit, increasing your fat intake and increasing your protein intake. But other than that, if you're part of the general population, don't worry about it. Focus on calories, focus on protein, and then any kind of calorie left over after you've got your protein in can be used to just eat carbohydrates and fats to your heart's content. I hope this helps. I hope this makes sense. If you like this video, give it a like. If you've got any questions for me, please feel free to comment below, because I'd be more than happy to answer them for you. And if you want any more free fitness or fat loss based content without any of the bullshit, as always, make sure that you're either following my Instagram at k.p_health or subscribe to this channel. Peace.